good evening, and welcome to I Hope I Get This Up Soon version of Bread Church. It is mid-October 2020. We've been doing this now virtually since March, and I will admit that over the last couple of months I've hit a wall. After the babka recipe did not appear on my computer for a while, and then I realized in the middle of making the recipe last month that the camera had cut out right in the middle of the making of that. I just kind of got depressed about the whole thing, and I will admit that I was not anticipating this very highly. It's easy, and we've all been in this place, probably multiple times over the course of this pandemic, where there's just not a lot of motivation to do anything. And yet, there have been several people that have written to me, that have commented, that have said how much they miss it, and there are lots of people that are like, I could really use that right now. And so I've been trying to think about that as well as what I need. I started doing Bread Church not because it was something that I thought, lots and lots of people would flock to immediately, but because it was something that I needed. I needed the discipline of making bread, because in some ways it had gotten to be a chore. And Bread Church has made it a joy to find out new recipes, a joy to get together and to do things together, a joy to see people discovering something new. And so not being able to do this with people has taken some of that joy out for me. And yet there has been a lot of joy in receiving comments and receiving some of the feedback that I've gotten, even from people that haven't necessarily watched it. There are lots of folks that have said, I've got to get that, I've got to watch that sometime. And I hope that if that's you, that you have found it just when you need it. Because I found a little bit of what I needed over this week in order to come and do this. And it was in the form of one of the baking shows that I watched, the Great British Baking Show, and they had their bread week, and they started off with soda bread. And I thought, you know what? That's the kind of bread that I need right now. I need bread that's just going to rise. It's just going to happen, and within about an hour and 15 minutes, I'm going to go from ingredients to bread. And it's going to remind me that sometimes it's not always about the waiting and the waiting and the waiting and the waiting. Sometimes there are gifts that are given to you that help you right now. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to do two different kinds of soda bread. The first one, and I've had to pre-measure this because of course I forgot to bring over a larger scoop than a quarter cup. So I just went ahead and pre-measured my flour into here. This is 2 cups of just regular all-purpose flour. And then I'm going to add a half of a teaspoon of baking soda. Now, baking soda is what makes the combination, I should say, of baking soda and buttermilk. So these two things together are what makes soda bread rise and have that nice fluffy texture that we want out of bread. I will say, as with most breads, I have had an instance where I have made a horrible mistake with this bread. So after that, I need a half teaspoon of kosher salt. There you go. And then I need some freshly ground black pepper. And I found that actually this really does make a difference. If you don't have a grinder, that's fine. Just add yourself 1/4 of a teaspoon of pepper. But I like the I like it when I hit a little chunk of this because I don't grind it terribly finely. So I just like it when I hit a little pocket of that. And then I need half a teaspoon of sugar. So my experience with this was that I was going along and I was making some preview ones for a previous bread church, and I had gotten them all done. I was being efficient, I was working neat, and I was making two of each kind. The cheddar cheese and green onion one that I'm doing right now, and then the chocolate chip one that I'll do in a second. And I added everything and I put them in the oven, and they just kind of looked dull. I mean, they didn't open up, they didn't do things. I baked them for extra long. I didn't know what had happened. I cut into them. They were so dense. It was almost like eating barely baked dough, but not like soft like dough. It was just so very dense. I had no idea what had happened until I finally figured out that my brain had put in baking powder instead of baking soda. It's not the same. I made powder bread, and that's not good at all. So ever since then, I have reminded myself, baking soda, little yellow box or bag, whichever. In any case, so to this mixture, I'm going to add 4 ounces of cheddar cheese that is cubed up into about 1/4 inch cubes. Toss that around a little bit, get that all distributed in there. And then I'm also going to add a couple of tablespoons of chopped green onions. Now the original recipe also said that you could maybe have the cheese and add bacon in addition or instead. And I kind of like having it just the cheese. So this now just needs the 3/4 cup of buttermilk, but because that is what starts the reaction, I'm going to wait until the very end to do that, and I'm going to add that right before I get it all together and put it onto my cookie sheet so that I can take it back over to the house and pop it right in. You will get pictures of that. This next one, the chocolate chip one, starts off with 2½ cups of flour. It's a slightly larger recipe, so 2½ cups of regular all-purpose flour, and then you use 2½ tablespoons of unsweetened cocoa powder. Now, I have not noticed a great deal of difference in whether I've used dark cocoa powder or just regular cocoa powder or the different brands, so use a brand that you like. But you're going to do 2½ tablespoons, and I'm just going to kind of eyeball that other ½ tablespoon. The thing I like about this is that I can be slightly less precise with this recipe. So you have the flour and the cocoa powder, and then 1½ teaspoons of baking soda. There's one, and I will be a little precise with this. Is that half? Big old clump. The only thing about this is it clumps a little bit. There we go, 1½ And you don't want clumps, because if you get a clump in there of your baking soda, it just tastes awful. It's got that metallic taste to it. No, bad. This again has 1/2 teaspoon of salt, but it has a full 1/4 cup of sugar. So, 1/4 cup of sugar. And then 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Oops. I usually never mind if it goes a little bit more in there. And then finally 1/2 cup of mini chocolate chips. Mini, you know, or I could chop these. I'm just going to put them in whole because right now I'm not in the mood to chop. And I can just do that. Mix all of this together. Getting some of those lumps out. And the cocoa powder in there will turn this kind of a dusky brown. But you want to just get all of that mixed together in there. If you see any big lumps of the baking soda, kind of break them up. Because even I didn't get all of those lumps out. There we go. And then I'm prepared to add my buttermilk. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this bread right now is because I was contemplating the psalm that says, God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. I feel like I've been troubled for the last several months, and I've wondered in the baking of bread what there is to the immediacy. Where is God present in the immediacy? A lot of the bread that I bake is about patient waiting, whether it is overnight waiting or whether it's the wait on the rise or the wait on the proof. It's about waiting. And this bread gives me bread in just a very little bit. You see, I mixed these two recipes in probably a little less than maybe 10, 12 minutes. And so I wanted us to know that not only is God in the midst of the long term and the waiting and the delayed gratification and all of that, but that God is also an ever-present help in trouble. That God is with me right now, even when things feel distant, things feel like they're falling apart just a little bit, things feel heavy and weighted. There is also God in the midst of this, and sometimes it's just in what I'm doing and what I choose to do. And so I wondered, this is by the way, this is for the first one, for the cheese, it's 3/4 of a cup of buttermilk. And as soon as I pour that in there, I can see bubbles forming in that mix. And I'm going to, since that has chocolate flour on it now, I'm going to go ahead and use my other spoon for this one. I wondered where you turn when you just need something right now. What is it that you can always count on to bring you joy? And how does it do that? Bread almost always brings me joy. And sometimes, very, very seldom is it in the eating of it. More of the time, bread, I find joy in bread in the making of it. So I wonder what for you is your place of joy. Maybe it is drawing, maybe it is spending time with your kids. Maybe it's maybe there are places that you go. Maybe you have journaling, or maybe you are a reader. Maybe it's not a hobby. Maybe you find great joy in your work. And I also do find great joy in my work, although work has kind of expanded to a whole lot of things that right now I'm sure that they will bring me joy eventually, but right now they also seem like a lot of work. And so if this is not quite coming together, I'm just going to splash a little bit more of that in there. You want it to just come together so that you can get it onto the pan. Yep, see, It's cleaning itself up off of the bowl. It's going to look like a lot of cheese. This thing is studded with cheese, and that is what is going to make it so good. So very good. And now it is sticking a little bit to this, but there we go. All in there. And I'm just going to take this, I'm going to roll it around a little bit. I'm going to put it onto my tray. Get that ready to go in the wash. I'm going to take my knife and I am going to, actually I'm going to dust this with flour. I may have added just a little bit too much of the buttermilk. Dust it with flour, and then I'm going to cut down deep and cut down deep. Now that will expand when I put it into the oven. That's one loaf done. So where spiritually do you find that? Very recently, I have found that in the process of memorizing scripture and writing scripture. And just a second, I'm going to go wash my hands. Back. So as I was saying, memorizing scripture and handwriting scripture. I've been handwriting scripture for a while now. Memorizing scripture I've only been doing for a couple of years. But memorizing is more learning it by heart so that I can speak it, so that I can kind of know it, so that it comes out from within me. And even the process of saying it out loud has some interpretation to it. This is 1 1/4 cups of buttermilk. There we go. But different people find that different things have an effect on them spiritually. Some do spiritual readings, some have prayer, some have groups that they are able to have conversation with. That brings them into the presence of God in the present moment. Not just you hope that someday you understand it, but in the present moment you can feel and sense God with you. So again, I'm going to stir this together. This, of course, has that wonderful, wonderful, wonderful chocolate smell. So I encourage you to find something, or if you know what it is. If you are in a place like that, put a reminder to yourself up, a reminder to yourself that God is not only present, but that you know how God is present. That you are a person who sees and experiences God in these particular ways, at these particular moments, through friends, through accountability partners, through things that are not only good for you, but that are good for others. It can be a whole lot of different ways. So this is come together nicely. Come together off of that. I'm going to pull some of this off of the spoon, and then like I did with the other one, kind of get my hands, pull it around, gather up the last little bits of it there, and then, oops, put it into the center. Now I don't want to get it ever too dry looking, because that will mean a very dry and crumbly. You want this to have some moistness to it, and since it doesn't have any butter in it, the richness comes from this buttermilk. So, before I pick up my knife, I am once again going to go wash my hands. Give a little bit of dusting over the top of this. And then down and down. Like I said, that will just open up. So I'm going to go take these and put these in the oven. I will put pictures at the end of this video. This one the cheddar and green onion goes into a 400-degree oven for about, let's see, 22 to 25 minutes. This one is a 350-degree oven, and it's going to go in for about 45 minutes. So a little bit lower and slower and nice and quick. Now they're both going to need to register somewhere around 190 to 200 on the inside, so if you really want to kind of test them out like that, this is where having them expand is going to make all the difference, because that'll be a whole section of the inside that bakes evenly like you want it to. So I hope that you find your place of expansion, of God being present right now, and you being able to get a win or to feel some sense of if it's accomplishment or if it's just presence. If you just need to feel God present with you right now, that you are able to do that and that you are able to find that. And maybe it's making bread. And whatever you do, I hope that your bread does indeed rise, and that you find someone to share that with. And that is now my alarm to go and pray for our schools, so I'm going to do that, and wish you a very happy rest of your October. Thanks, and we'll see you next month.
Till all the jails are empty and all the bellies filled, till no one hurts or steals or lies, and no more blood is spilled. God has work for us to do. God has work for us to do, till God's will is done and all things are made new. God has work for us to do. Till age and race and gender no longer separate, till pulpits, press, and politics are free of greed and hate. God has work for us to do. God has work for us to do, till God's will is done and all things are made new. God has work for us to do. By praying through our doing and singing though we fear, by trusting